Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. You'll be pleased to hear I'm not going to give you death by PowerPoint. I'm just going to talk to you. So I think probably the starting point, obviously Cornwall Council is very influential in decision making in Cornwall. We are not the only decision makers in Cornwall. Clearly government, other government agencies, and of course parish and town councils and you as residents are all important in that process. But I thought I'd talk briefly about how Cornwall Council goes about its decision making, and also a little bit about my journey, how I ended up being a Cornwall councillor, because any one of you could be a Cornwall councillor if you so desired. So my journey into being a Cornwall councillor, first of all, I'm a Cornish lad, born and brought up in Falmouth, ran away to join the Air Force in 1985, and after spending 20 odd years in the RAF, came back to Cornwall, and fairly quickly found myself being asked if I wanted to be on the parish council. And I didn't duck, and ended up on the parish council. 2017, the current Cornwall councillor for my area, Conservative councillor, asked me if I'd be interested in standing in his place at the election. Agreed to do so. Got elected. Spent the first 4 years, in other words, the previous administration at Cornwall Council as a backbench councillor. Stood again in 2021, found myself re-elected, and the Conservative group, becoming the largest group in the council, became the administration. I was asked if I'd sit on the cabinet involved in environment and climate change. Reason why I ended up being asked to do that, partly because back in 2019, Cornwall Council declared a climate emergency, and I was actually the councillor that seconded that motion. So I had a bit of a history of being somebody who understood climate change. Also, since leaving the RAF, I've worked in flood risk management in Cornwall, so I had a good understanding of that. Finally, my service career fared me fairly well for the other bit of my portfolio, which is emergency management and the fire and rescue service. And of course, some of the things we've talked about today, you'll understand that actually when there are floods, when there are emergencies, the council is also involved in the responding to those. So some people say, you can't really change much if you're not a councillor. Well, actually, that isn't true. You have influence as residents, as members of the public. And it's important to understand that whilst you may not be a decision maker in things, you are certainly an influencer. And I know you will all be able to respond to council consultations, to council events, to actually get your views across. And they will be listened to. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So how does Cornwall Council actually work as a decision-making body? When Cornwall Council was set up in 2009, it came about as a result of the 6 district councils and the county council all combining into one entity, which became known as Cornwall Council. They decided that they were going to work on what's called a leader and cabinet model. So of the 87 Cornwall councillors, 10 make up the cabinet, one of those being the leader. And they are what's known as the executive. So most of the decisions made by Cornwall Council are either made by the cabinet or delegated to officers. And I'll give you an example of decisions made by officers, delegated decisions. 90% of planning applications are decided by officers in the council. Only 10% of those decisions are made by planning committees. So, okay. So what I would say, a couple of things. Go onto the Cornwall Council website. If you haven't already done so, there's a little button at the top that says register. Register yourself for an account with Cornwall Council on the website. That will then take you to your own homepage, which will show you any consultations that are taking place. It will show you any planning applications in your immediate area, and it will enable you to become active in the workings of the council. And I'd like to talk far more about it, and I'm sure that when I go over to my little corner over there, if you want to understand a little bit more about the decision-making process in Cornwall Council, I'm happy to answer questions.